Good.
Because there's also a link here. Well, I don't know. Where they interviewed the people who found it, and they're saying, look, we're not saying it's aliens. We're just saying we can't prove it's not aliens because the weirdness of the structure, it's not something that they've ever encountered in nature before. It's pretty cool. I was like, oh man, this is awesome. First Thor's hammer and now aliens. Marvel has a lot of money.
Of course, the list of things we've never encountered before is long, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean anything.
But no, I think they're just going to do a live action Avengers again. And, got the alien army. There's this guy who's built Thor's hammer.
Right.
Next thing you know, there's going to be this man in a suit. Okay, let's go here.
All right. Sound check is solid.
Yeah, it's not too bad of a lag. Hey, did you get a post in your Google Plus stream from Jen Huger?
No.
It's weird. I mean, it was like it's shared privately, and like the little notification thing said it was like I missed a post from. I mean, I don't know if it's just Google saying you should come back here more, but one missed post from Jen Wick or Wyke Huger, and it shows shared privately. Oh, if I click on that, share this privately with me and 181 others. So never mind. So you weren't one of the 181.
I guess not.
Okay.
I don't think I have her in a circle. Maybe she doesn't have me in a circle, since you were the one who reached out to her.
Right.
All right. Let's see. The topic has to be, let's see. We can't prove it's not aliens.
I'm just saying. See, we can't prove it's not aliens. That's a lot better than sometimes we do this just for money. We can't prove it's not aliens.
October 18th.
Yippers.
I owe somebody royalties now because I did that.
No, because we haven't.
No, we're broadcasting.
Oh, we're broadcasting?
Yeah, we're not recording. We're broadcasting. Well, I guess we're recording on YouTube.
Oh.
I should have told you that. I assumed you knew that when I said I was doing a sound check.
Yeah, I heard you say starting the hangout. Oh, this was what did I put for my this week's link? Because I really wanted to use this one.
Oh, my Audible credits are available.
Oh, have you heard of Scribd?
Scribd? No.
It's cheaper. It's like $9 a month for unlimited books plus one audio credit.
Huh. Okay.
So
I don't read.
But you get an audio credit.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
And plus, there's a lot of audio books available for free.
True.
So
far, I have never read/listened to an audio book, a free audio book with anywhere near the production quality of an Audible book.
Right. Oh, and I've the Bane Free Radio Hour that I've started listening to. And where they serialize the books, they're serializing the Audible broadcast.
Cool.
So it's the same Audible quality. It's just like they finished a David Weber book, and it took them, I think, 50 something weeks to do it. So basically it's a chapter a time. So anyway, I'm already, I don't know why, but this one that I'm listening to, I enjoy listening to it. But it's a book I know, and it's a book I like. I love The Martian, but I didn't enjoy listening to that as much. So weird. I can't afford to be an Audible slave. Okay, I am going to, because my goal is to be out of debt. Which I'm making decent progress on. Okay, I am changing my SES link because I really wanted to do this other one. Oh, come, dude, I hate. Okay. Oh man.
So something I've noticed about Windows 10 since I've been using it is the start bar and icons appear on both monitors. That's different
Really?
from Windows 7. I don't remember if I never used dual monitors on Windows 8, but on Windows 7 and below, it's only on the primary monitor.
Is it a setting?
Maybe. I mean, that doesn't bother me really. Yeah, they both appear to do exactly the same thing. Same, you can switch windows with it. Either way. Yeah. All right. Shall we begin the show?
Okay, I am recording.
As am I. Whoa, why did my camera angle change? All of a sudden the top of my head's cut off. Oh, it's because I dragged my window up.
Oops.
Okay. All right, here we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Everyday Linux episode 210. We Can't Prove It's Not Aliens, recorded October 18th, 2015, and brought to you by Element OP Productions, elementop.com. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Linux show that's not about Linux, but about life in the context of Linux. I am your host, Mark, the Sultan of the Soapbox Cockerel, and joining me this week is your good friend and mine, Seth, the Gooey Kid Anderson. Hello, Seth.
Hello, Mark, and welcome to the fine folks out from these here interwebs. Glad you could join us this here evening.
Chris is not with us tonight because reasons. So it's just the two of us, and hopefully that will be good enough. So I just wanted to say my kids had their fall festival, because it's not politically correct to call it a Halloween carnival anymore, at school. And there was this raffle thing where each class puts together a basket full of goodies, usually around a theme, and you pay a dollar to a choice, or $6 for $5 tickets, and you put it in and draw. Anyway, so we won a basket. It was called the Snow Day Survival Kit, which is funny because we get snow days once every 5 years. But anyway, among the things in the Snow Day Survival Kit was an old-fashioned plastic pegs version of Battleship.
Wow.
And I didn't think anybody would care to do that, but I've been playing that with my kids. Particularly my 11-year-old and my 7-year-old have been going crazy about it, and I haven't won a game yet. These girls are good. I don't think they're cheating. I think they're just really good at narrowing down, and each time it hasn't been, I'm going to go here, I'm going to go here. They somehow zero in exactly on my battleship and take it out, and I lose. And I'll take out like their destroyer, and I'll take out 4 of their ships. The only ship they take out is my battleship, and I lose. But Hasbro wins again with a generational favorite battleship.
Wait a minute. So you play where if you lose your battleship, it's over?
That's the rules of the game. Yes, that's why it's called Battleship.
I've only ever played it like last man standing. So.
Yeah, well, the idea is that you take out whatever you got, but everything is there to support the battleship. And if you lose the battleship, you lose the battle. So
I've never played it that way. I've never read the rules to say that that's right or wrong. It's just we've always played as long as you've got something left, you're still in the fight. So that's just the way it's been played.
Well, I'm sure the listeners will tell me I'm doing it wrong, but that's the way I've always played it. Now I'm going to have to go back and read the rules, but I'm pretty sure the rules say that the first to lose the battleship wins.
If only there were some repository of information, we could research the rules of Battleship.
Perhaps something where we could say, all right, Schmoogle, but we'll see what happens. And a bit of tech note, I got not just one, but two invites for the OnePlus 2 phone. And while I snapped at the opportunity to buy the OnePlus 1 for my wife, I'm choosing to pass on the OnePlus 2. I did, I was there. I had the code in my hot little hands and was ready to go. But then I started, researching the device and comparable devices out there, and it's good, but I don't think. See, here's the thing. This goes back to rich white people problems, first world problems. It's a fine phone, and they're charging $500-ish, $489, I think, is the base for the 64 gig model. That's a fine price. That's a reasonable price. In fact, it's probably a very thin profit margin price. But considering the OnePlus 1 came out last year at $299, almost $200 cheaper, and the specs of the OnePlus 2 aren't 100% better or 80% better to warrant a $200, because you can still buy the OnePlus 1 at $299. I just couldn't do it. And I started looking at other things. There's the Moto X Pure, which pound for pound beats it in almost every spec category, and it's for 70 something. It's like $20 cheaper. I just couldn't do it. So I know you don't care, Seth, but I thought the audience might care that I've just decided the OnePlus 2 is a pass.
Well, see, it was OnePlus 200. That's what the 2 stands for. Yeah, yes. OnePlus $200. And, according to Hasbro.com, there's a PDF for Battleship rules. And it's object of the game, be the first to sink all 5 of your opponent's ships. So. All
right. So I've been playing it wrong for 40 years.
No, you've been playing the cockerel variant. So,
Actually, when you're playing with a 7-year-old, it's fine to get the game over earlier. So I don't mind so much.
Right. Yeah. They're not going to be listening to this show to know that.
So it really is. See, literally all my life, that's the way we've played it. Not just in my house, but with my friends, is when you sink your battleship, the game's over.
Wow. And I had never heard that. So
it's last man standing, huh? That's how it's supposed to be. I guess that's more exciting, maybe, but it's always been fun to go on a hunt and peck for the battleship. Maybe you should try playing it my way sometime and see which is more fun.
Yeah. I'll take your word for it. I mean, I'm sure it would be a lot faster. It's sort of like if you play Monopoly, you might want to set a limit, the first to so much money or who has the most after. Otherwise, those games can last for days. So,
right.
I like the shortened rules format.
Around my house as a kid, around my grandparents' house, we played a game. We called it Chinese checkers. It was not Chinese checkers. I have no idea what it was. Maybe, I'm sure there was a game somewhere, but these were boards that my grandfather had cut out of particle board. And there was 4, because it's a square, 4 home row things. And you had 5 marbles in each home row, and you had to go around the circle, rolling the dice and moving marbles until you got all the way around the board and back in your home row. And if you jumped on somebody, if you jumped over them, you would take that marble, put that back in their home row, and they have to start over again. Somebody tell me what this game actually is. But again, it was always something we played with just a bag of dime store marbles and a piece of particle board with the board cut out. Maybe my granddad invented the game. Who knows? But the marbles always smelled like pickles because we kept them in pickle jars. The things you remember. But anyway, that was one of those games that could take hours and hours and hours to play because you keep sending people back to the start.
Right.
And I remember at some point we decided there was some sort of abbreviated rules. I forget what they were. But we decide, do we have time for the long game or the abbreviated game? And I know Monopoly is one of those too, where there's fast variants, but sometimes the fast variants can still take 2.5 to 3 hours.
Right.
Uh,
Nothing like a good game of like Axis and Allies if you've got
days.
a spare few minutes.
So like over Thanksgiving weekend, we would show up at somebody's house like Wednesday night and open the board of Axis and Allies. And we'd stay there Wednesday night, Thursday, Friday night, Saturday, when we might finish the game before we all had to leave to go back on Sunday. Maybe. It wasn't a guarantee.
Man, I bought a box game when I was in Chicago, actually. And I think I unwrapped it just to look at the pieces, but I've never actually played it. And that's been, I think, over 5 years ago. So missed the board game Axis and Allies. I play AAA still occasionally on the old computer.
All right. So I guess that's all we have for our mindless drivel part of the show. No, wait, that's the whole show. But let's move on to the listener feedback. Benjamin thinks that maybe the aliens have the answer to part of our discussion last week. It says, hi, Mark. Last week you discussed about energy and progression of mankind. Here's a link which fits good into your discussion. Have a look. And we'll talk about that link in just a minute. So, by the way, I think you're right. A quantum leap in progression must be something unexpected. Possibly this isn't something technical. For centuries, progression in technology and philosophy went side by side. At some point, technological process overtook the philosophical and ethical progress, and the former equally regarded disciplines went into a state where technology became number one in prioritization. So maybe it's time to find new ethics for our collaboration, and maybe this will mark the next step. Of course, one may have a cultural pessimism gap between our way and the Star Trek way. It's not just a technological one. Just some random thoughts. Best wishes for you all, Benjamin. So I was stumbling a little bit through his email because Benjamin's primary language is German and my primary language is English. And between the two of us, it wasn't quite a smooth translation, but we got the point there. And I like the idea of pessimism gap. It's not just technology. It's the fact that we humans kind of suck.
You know, he talked about Star Trek, and I came across an article in my surfing the web that talked about how the Star Trek universe would not exist without a large supply of slave labor. I didn't read it to go into the thing, but I was just, it was an interesting title, probably just more clickbait, but it tied into his email. And so I figured I would share it with the world.
All right. So the link that he talked about, we'll go ahead and jump into that. theindependent.co.uk. I don't know if that's a real newspaper or if it's like the Inquirer for the UK, although I think most papers kind of have an Inquirer-esque thing. At least that's the American perspective of British newspapers. But astronomers have found something that may be giant, quote, megastructures orbiting a star near the Milky Way. And basically they found something that they're not sure what it is.
Right. But it was, and of course, the way in astronomy that you detect planets is you look at a star, and if the star dims, then you can see, it's because something passed between us and the planet. And then so you look at it, and if it does it on a regular basis, you can get more fine and go, it was a planet. The planet is approximately this big because that's how much the light dimmed. But so anyway, and I found a similar article to this, and it might have referenced this, or they might have referenced something else in business. In what was the one I found? If my stupid website would click. But anyway, Business Journal, I think. So it wasn't just an Inquirer thing, but they found this thing orbiting a star, and it had an irregular shape, and it was freaking huge. And so they're trying to figure out what it is. They say, possible suggestions is maybe a planet has broken up, or, the remnants and theory on how the planets form is, the remnants of this debris after stars creation coalesce and gravity sucks them in, they form planets. So it could be maybe a planet broke up, or a planet is about to form, or there is a theory that perhaps it's alien megastructures, something like a Dyson sphere. Anyway,
there's a line in the article that says, as civilizations become more technologically advanced, they create new and better ways of collecting energy, with the end result being harnessing of energy directly from their star. I don't know where that comes from, but okay. If the speculation about a megastructure being placed around the star system is correct, scientists say it could be a huge set of solar panels placed around the star. Or it could be monkeys flying out of my butt. The fact is, we have no idea. And some scientists said, yeah, we don't know that it is not solar panels. And so the independent.co.uk ran with that.
Yeah. And I found an article where people got in touch with the scientists, and they're like saying, we never said it was aliens. We basically said that we can't disprove it's not aliens because what we're seeing doesn't conform to any other thing that we've observed in nature. So interesting, is there life out there? I don't know. Maybe it's the Borg. They're coming for us, and, we will be assimilated, and resistance truly is futile.
All right. So the next bit of listener feedback we have is from Mike, the former butcher. And he's gloating a little bit. He says, I'm sure this will send Chris into seizures, but it was just announced yesterday. Mark, you need to move 2 hours north and soak up all the gigabit goodness. Mike, the former butcher, now IT tech support, not due in no small part to the Linux Academy. But he sends us a link from The Verge saying that Chattanooga, Tennessee, Comcast is going to be providing them 10 gigabit internet. Holy cannoli. 10 gigabit internet. Of course, it's from Comcast, so that's up to 10 gigabits. Really, it'll be 1.5 gigabits.
But megabits. You'll probably have like a 500 meg data cap.
Exactly.
So, you can do 10 gig, but only till you run out of your 500 meg.
And so the company, if you live in Chattanooga, Tennessee, you may be in for a treat. EPB Fiber Optics is bringing 10 gigabits internet speed to the southern city for $299 a month with free installation, no contracts, no cancellation fees. Dude, I would pay $300 a month for 10 gigabit internet. I would no longer need a hosting provider. I would no longer need to have servers out on the web. I could do everything from my basement if I had 10 gigabit speed. That's pretty amazing. It might be enough to make my commute an extra 2 hours a day. It's already 2 hours just to go 20 miles. I could add 2 hours more to go up to Chattanooga.
I mean, you've already moved to Georgia. You might as well move to Tennessee. Once you make that first move,
that's true.
Broken the ties of home.
Maybe I could get a job working for EPB Internet and suck in that 10 gigabits. I can't even imagine. Well, at that point, you are literally waiting on websites instead of websites waiting on you. Like your upstream is faster than anybody else, right? Your CDNs, right, would probably be able to meet 10 gigabits, maybe, but would the throughput to the rest of the world? You're faster than a lot of small town ISPs at 10 gigabits.
Yep.
Wonder what the upstream on that is. What, 500 megabits up?
128K.
Yeah.
10 gigs down, 128K up.
That's pretty amazing. I hope this is a case of the dominoes falling. Austin, Texas, Google announced gigabit internet, and they're doing it. They're rolling it out. Austin, AT&T said, yeah, we'll meet that, and so they're offering a gigabit internet in Austin. So the idea, I think, what I hope is happening is that once Google, like they so often do, they pushed the envelope, we're seeing that other companies are having to respond to that, and so this is not only responding but one-upping it. 10 gigabits internet. And my hope is that that's just going to be the way things are, that over time we'll just get to the point where internet bandwidth is not even a question anymore. You don't even talk about, like right now, most people have broadband to some point. It's not even a discussion whether or not you have broadband. It's assumed. So I think at some point it'll be assumed that you have near infinite broadband.
That I would so love to have that.
I mean, it'll take I think a decade or maybe two to get there, but there's nothing technical to prevent it. It's not, as we've said so many times before, there's not a limitation of bits. The bits are there, and everybody can be have infinite access. We've got to get rid of the copper and lay fiber, but even copper can do, way better than we're letting it do.
Yeah. The problem is it's cost prohibitive to people outside of population centers.
Right.
Once you get a mile outside of the switch or whatever that distance is, the population density drops, but the cost remains the same. It costs X amount to go 1 mile, whether that 1 mile serves 100 people or that 1 mile serves 1/10 of the way to one person.
Right.
So,
and that was the problem with telephones for a long time. In fact, we had the Federal Telecommunications Infrastructure Fund. It was a tax that everybody with a phone paid to bring access to people who didn't have phones. That's the way we handled bringing copper wires to every house in the country. Other countries skipped that problem by going straight to cell data, but they pretty much didn't have phones until they had cellular phones. So the U.S. invested in copper, and that's actually it was a huge leapfrog over the world for about 30 years, and now it's holding us back because we have this huge investment in copper. And the rest of the world is leaping over us because they're laying down new stuff. They don't have a multi-billion-dollar, trillion-dollar probably investment in copper, so they don't have that legacy. They can lay down new stuff, and so you go like South Korea is fond of saying they have the fastest internet in the world. They're also a country the size of some large American cities, and so the whole country is a population center at that point, and it's easier and more cost effective to do it.
Yeah, because $1,000. 1,000 people paying $1,000 is $1 each. One person paying $1,000 is $1,000, and that's a chunk of money.
Right.
So it's I don't know. I would love to have, come on. What do I do at home? Play Spider Solitaire, and I look at Facebook. I don't even really post much anymore. So I don't really do much. I don't need it, but I want it. And at this point, my habits have become so ingrained. I don't know if I don't know. Maybe I have 10 gigs now, and I just don't know.
Right. Because the truth is that most people have infinite internet. For most people, what they have is all they need. And upstream speeds are terrible on every ISP, but most people don't need upstream. They just need enough to send a call to the server to send stuff down. So only gamers care about upstream, and only people who want to run servers or, in my case, stream media out of their houses. So I think you're right in that cut a slice out of the population of America and ask them what their internet bandwidth is, and they don't know because it's enough. And most people, 4 megabits is fine. 10 megabits is better. So they just go to whoever's in their town, cable or DSL, and say, "Give me the fastest you've got," and it goes. And as long as it's enough to stream Netflix at 1080p, they're good.
Precisely. Yeah, they know. And I mean, honestly, that's as if I could do. I don't know, because I probably have access to the bandwidth to do Netflix now, but I don't want to do it. So I need something to gripe about. And if I get unlimited bandwidth, what am I going to have to gripe about, Mark? There's just some problems I'm not ready to let go of.
Yeah. And it's only guys like us who are going to the 1%ers isn't the right phrase, but the fringers, the people who are on that side are going to push that forward. But we need people like that. We need people to push the envelope forward because everybody benefits from it.
Yes, definitely. I wholeheartedly concur.
We are pushing the boundaries on your behalf. And my Windows 10 device just said, "Hey, we've scheduled a restart at 8:13 p.m. Are you okay with that?" No, I'm not okay with that. I'm doing something here, people. I'm really thinking I'm going to roll back this whole window. Oh, so I did, we had this discussion, I think it was last week, about can you stop or updates? Well, it turns out if you take the free update, you can't. If you pay for Windows, you can. So you can choose your updates. That's sort of the deal with the devil you make if you take the free update. Is that you get all other updates for free on their schedule. But fortunately, just did pop up and say, "Hey, we can reschedule this if you'd like." I wonder if I can reschedule it for Saturdays as far out as I can push it. I can't just reschedule it forever. But Okay. Anyway, just another thing. And so last bit of listener feedback, another Benjamin, not the same Benjamin, says he's got a name suggestion. Hey, guys, I'm at show 208 now. I don't know whether you've already got a fix for the show title problem, but to me, it seems obvious that this show will become the Mark Cockrell Show at some point when you keep it up. Since you're not seeming to be at that point yet and you want to stick to EDL, there's just one logical name for the show. It's EDL. The show that earlier dealt with Linux.
The Mark Cockrell Show, featuring your host, Mark Cockrell.
Yeah, I'm. If I were a famous person, I could do that, right? Joe Rogan, right. Adam Carolla, but they were famous before podcasting. I don't think you can ever get famous by podcasting enough to have a show named after you. We're not there yet. But yeah, I was just talking to somebody about that recently. You know, Joe Rogan, Adam Carolla, these guys, just by being who they are, had a podcast with millions of listeners. If Howard Stern decided to do a podcast, the first episode would have millions of downloads.
Right.
You know, Lee Laporte, he became quasi-famous doing something else, and he's now quasi-famous as a podcaster. But I've yet to see somebody who started as a podcaster become famous doing podcasts. The medium just isn't there yet. But earlier dealt with Linux. That's pretty good.
Yeah. I was asking somebody at work. I was like, hey man, do you podcast? He's like, yes, I listened to one about network security, but I was like, so the answer would have been no, thank you. But because he didn't understand the concept that podcasting is internet radio. He was like, I listened to a security presentation and he called it a podcast. Right. So yes, I podcast.
And there was one, right? One episode. It wasn't.
There was. All you need is one.
Right. So, Rick Crouch in the chat room says Element OP does life is a suggestion for EDL. Good stuff, except you got to run Element OP together. But hey, that works. So I should have led with this earlier. It would have been smarter, but I didn't. Our friend Mike, the former butcher, he's written into the show a few times before and said that in no small part, this show has, we haven't taught him the skills that he's needed, but we've showed him that it's possible. We've inspired him to move beyond being a butcher. But one of the things that has taught him the skills, some of the skills he's needed, is our friends over at the Linux Academy. And he's one of the success stories that I like. It's not that he's, what I like about his story is he didn't go after a Linux job right away, just because he didn't go to Linux Academy, get some certification, go straight there. But he used the skills available at Linux Academy to boost his overall technical knowledge. And then he went and got an entry-level position, or, mid-level, I'm not sure what it is, in the tech field. And I think a lot of times people, when they want to jump from one career to another, or they want to start, jump from high school to a career, they want to jump straight into that mid-level or straight into that upper level. And I'm not going to say that's not how the world works, but it's pretty unusual for people to do that. I've certainly never done that. Seth, I mean, you started at the bottom and worked your way up, right?
I've started at the bottom and repeatedly gone to the bottom, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, no, I mean, idiots, if you have that in-demand skill, and some people, they're just smart and they chose computers, and that's what, so but most of the time the overnight success you hear about is 20 years in the making.
Right.
So wow, that person's an overnight success, but you talk to them, I've been doing this for 15 years. Somehow yesterday everybody knew I did it. But for the first 14 years I was in the poorhouse, but it's an overnight success. So yeah.
I think if I keep podcasting long enough, I'll become an overnight success.
Right.
But a good way to expand your tool belt in general is our friends over at the linuxacademy.com. They take you the YouTube route, right? But so much more than just YouTube. I was doing some auto repairs today on my truck, and I went to YouTube to learn how to do it because there's so much stuff out there on YouTube. The problem was all the videos that I was watching were other guys like me who were hacking around and trying to find the best way to do it, and just filming their success or failures. And you can certainly learn from other people's failures and successes, but it would be so much better if I had a step-by-step a tutorial that said do this and then do this with a a paper guide so that I could follow, because it's hard sometimes to watch the video while you're doing the thing. You want to stop it, you want to go back, and it's easy to get lost in where you are. LinuxAcademy.com solves that problem, not with auto repair, but with technology, with Linux, with Amazon web hosting, with Python, with so many other things. They've gone way beyond just Linux, but they start with the video. That's where they start. It's a YouTube style, a video that you can watch on your mobile device or on pretty much anything that you own, anything with a relatively recent browser, and you're going to be able to view it. But they come with the companion guides, the PDF study guides that you can download, you can watch. They're time coded where you go at, and then they give you, in my analogy, a toy car that you can take apart, and it's okay if you break it, in the form of their lab structure. It's an amazing virtual lab structure. You can have up to eight different distributions. You can pick one of those, and you can have up to 4 running at any one time, and they can interact with each other. One can be a client, one can be a server. They can both be servers. They can talk with each other, all in this safe environment where if you turn the wrong screw or strip the head off of something, you haven't ruined your truck, or you haven't blown up your work server where you were doing something in the spare room hoping to learn from it. So it's a safe environment with high quality instruction. It's not just guys poking around saying, well, I'm pretty sure this works. I don't know how many times I've watched a video where a guy's doing a demonstration and I hear him go, oh, wait, hold on. Let me go back, click here. Maybe you right click. Oh yeah, there it is. It's a right click. There's none of that with Linux Academy, because they're high quality professionals in the field doing the videos. So I've told you about the videos. I've told you about the PDF. I've told you about the lab environment, but unfortunately I don't have time to tell you about everything else. Those are 3 of the biggies, but there's so much more. There's a whole user community. There's the ways you can build your own lesson plans. There's ways that they can build a lesson plan for it, tools that they have to keep you on track, certification courses where you can go straight from the Linux Academy to the CompTIA certification. And it's so much more than I can talk about in a 2-minute ad or a 7-minute ad or a 24-minute ad. Just take my word for it. I wouldn't be hawking them every week if I didn't believe in them. And I really do believe in them. So check them out, linuxacademy.com. Use the referral code EverydayLinux, and you'll get a discount off their already stupid cheap prices. Their stupid cheap prices are $29 a month. All of the stuff that I just talked about for less than $30 a month. You're just not going to find that anywhere on the internet. There are other places that charge you less for videos, but you get less than videos. Or you just get videos, rather. So if you want to buy, like anything else, the more you buy, the less you pay. If you buy 3 months, a quarter, that's $69. Or if you buy annually, it's $229, which is less than $20 a month, because $20 a month would be $240. See how I did that? So check them out. But again, if you use the code EverydayLinux, you get a discount off of those prices. LinuxAcademy.com. Let them know that we sent you.
Go to your university and say, hey, I want to take your online courses and I will pay you $29 a month per course, and see if they would be good with that, because really you're getting institutional level online classes. I mean, yes, you're not sitting in a classroom, but you're getting the equivalent of online classes. You have the ability to contact the instructors and have, whether, emails back and forth or whatever, for $29 a month. You can't beat the price.
But it's not just about price, it's high quality too.
Right.
All right, so let's move on now to a little bit of tech news, where Yahoo says goodbye to passwords. Well, it might as well. Everybody's hacking them anyway.
Right. Yeah, no, they have come out, and I love the concept of, you need to get rid of passwords, but they're coming out with and of course this is Tech News World, so there's 1,000 different ads that pop up when you launch the web page. But this is the Yahoo Mail app on smartphones, and so when you try to sign in, it's basically going to send a push notification to your phone that you click OK on. So I don't like it, because if you lose your phone, then somebody has your email. And well, of course, I mean, if you have a Yahoo Mail client, your password's signed into it, so it's already there anyway. But I think they're just getting rid of it on the mobile devices. At least that's all it is now. So if you go to a browser, you would still need a password. But yeah, so they're thinking about security and they're looking at ways to differentiate themselves and make themselves more secure. That's a good thing for everybody concerned, because the last thing we need is more zombie email addresses shooting out spam. So it's cool. I don't have the Yahoo Mail app anymore, so it's not really going to affect me at this point. But yes, so Yahoo is in the process of at least saying goodbye to passwords.
And I think everybody understands that the way we do security now, those days are numbered. Passwords are going to go away. Steve Gibson is, much publicized for like 3 or 4 years now, working on his replacement called Squirrel. Google has been doing their best to do it. Now on Marshmallow, I have the newest version of Android on my phone, and it has a vault built in, so that when I go to a website it can authorize my phone by the device ID, it just logs me straight in. Now that's on the phone, right?
Right.
So these are, I have to have already gotten into my phone, right? So I've had to use my secure password or a swipe pattern or whatever to get in there. So these are all things that simplify the end user experience at the risk of lessening security. The strong multi-character, very long, random hash type password is still the most secure way to do it. The problem is, where do those passwords live? Because if they're that strong, the odds that they can live in your brain go way down. And so then they've got to be stored somewhere. Are they going to be stored on your device? Or are they going to be stored on the end user server on that end? That's not a good idea, as we've seen from, Ashley Madison and everybody else. If they keep your passwords, it becomes a treasure trove for dedicated people who are trying to attack it. And it's not that their security is weak necessarily. It's just that the hackers only have to succeed once, and the defenders have to succeed 1,000 times a second. So right. It's a never winning game. The servers never win. They only can delay. They never win. So this Apple's system with the fingerprints, that's pretty good. Android is kind of putting something together haphazardly about it. Haphazardly, they're half-heartedly. That's the word I was looking for. They're half-heartedly putting fingerprint support into things, but their apps don't really use it in a meaningful way. But then the fingerprint readers aren't as secure as we would like them to be, because in order to make them easy and fast so that you could just touch the fingerprint reader you're in, you have to take shortcuts. So security right now is broken, and we all know it, but nobody has a better way yet than a password.
Yeah. And so, it's one of those, you hit the nail square on the head. Unfortunately, the weakest link in security is the most complex computer still built, the human brain, and our implementation of Life 3.0 or whatever version we're on now. Some good password haystacking would take care of this issue. But yeah, you've got to walk around knowing how to get into your website, and it has to be convenient for you, because if it's not convenient for you, then why bother having it? But at the same time, if it's not secure, then why bother having it? So yeah, it's that trade-off. And by nature, security makes things more complicated. That just means it's doing its job.
I hope that within my lifetime, we will look back on this era and just sort of groan in remembering how terrible it was, at the ludicrousy of remembering 36 character gibberish things to be able to get into websites. That the whole concept of the username and password will be it'll be like the 8-track. It'll be one of those things that you remember not being as great as you wanted it, even at the time. And today you remember it as being terrible. I don't think we're there yet, but let's be honest. People really haven't even been trying. Except for the last, maybe 5-10 years. Let's give it 10 years. For the long time, passwords were good enough. We've been doing this for, I don't know, probably the concept of a passphrase goes back eons. But in terms of technology, the moment we decided to secure things, and I put that in air quotes because there's no such thing as network security. You're either networked or you're secure. The moment we started trying to secure things, the way we did it was by a passcode of some kind. So that's just been good enough, and we've been living with it, and we all know it's not great, but we live with things now that we all know is not great. You know, we dig up dead dinosaurs and pump them into our gas tanks so that we can drive. We all know it's not great, but it's the best thing that we have right now. And someday we'll look back on that and go, wow, I can't believe we had to dig up dead dinosaurs to pump into a storage tank on our cars. But you know, we're not there yet.
Right. You know, it's two-factor authentication. That's what you need. That would be pretty hard to break because it's got to be something you have and something you know. Because if it's just something you have, or if it's just something you know, you've cut your potential security in half. So everybody has their phone, but you still need something to access it. So
yeah,
I don't know.
You got to make sure the phone is then secured, right?
Right.
Which is a password right now.
Right.
All right, moving on. Apple gets a dose of its own medicine, but in an amount that is pretty trivial to a company that size. The University of Wisconsin at Madison has won a patent infringement lawsuit against Apple.
Yes, they got 234 million. They were asking for 400, so you know it wasn't like they were seeking to break the bank. But the judge ruled yes, they violated, but they didn't do it willingly, which to me that just is ridiculously stupid.
We accidentally.
Yeah, we didn't do it on purpose. You know, so yes, Apple is ponying up 234. You know, I don't know, Tim Daly, you know, the gold plated is just going to be painted on instead of, you know, layered on an inch thick on his next iPhone. It's a drop in the bucket for them. It's nothing, but because, and of course, you know, Apple doesn't really, if your name isn't Samsung, they don't go after you directly, but a lot of these, a lot of the patent troll organizations and the companies acting like patent trolls are pretty largely substantially owned by Apple. So they kind of use a third party for deniability and good press, but they are one of the strong arms behind and again, because they actually they're not just a patent holding company, but they exercise a patent troll-esque behavior on more than one occasion through a third-party subsidiary or a wholly or partially owned third-party subsidiary. I just think it's good they get a little bit of their own comeuppance.
And the odds are that Apple will spend $300 to $400 million fighting this $234 million judgment against them. They'll continue to appeal it because they're more interested in their image than they are the money. I know that was certainly true under Steve Jobs, and I suspect it's also true under, you know, the current leadership.
I mean, but really, you know, I mean, if you take away Apple's image, then they're just another company. So their image is really the only thing they have. I mean, and the fact that they own the whole silo, but so they've got to protect that image, because if you think of Apple in the exact same way you think of HP and Dell, and, you know, Lenovo, then they wouldn't be the largest company in the world in terms of market cap.
All right. And moving on, fitting for this time of year. I remember in the early 80s, the scare about razor blades and apples when you went out trick-or-treating. Now, if somebody gives you an apple trick-or-treating, you don't eat it anyway, and you probably yell at them and give them the bird. But back when I was a kid, apples and oranges were fairly common, and, you know, some guy somewhere thought it was funny to put a razor blade in one, and so every time you got home, and for the next, you know, 30 years thereafter, I still do it today, you go over your kid's candy and just make sure that everything looks okay. Well, now we may have to be checking out USB drives to see if they all look okay. Make sure there's not a razor blade or a series of highly charged capacitors in them.
Yes, a researcher who goes by the name of Dark Purple has created a USB device that can permanently destroy or at least severely damage your machine. And they did it showing a ThinkPad laptop. And of course, you know, those are pretty old because it was actually an IBM ThinkPad. But it's a USB, and from the outside, it looks like a regular thumb drive. But inside, it has a lot of capacitors, and it delivers a negative 220 volt electric surge into the USB port. And the thing that just makes it truly diabolical is those capacitors charge when you plug it in to the computer, because they, it takes a few seconds to charge, and then they deliver their payload and would shut out your motherboard. And things attached to your motherboard, like your hard drive, possibly your memory or other things, those wouldn't necessarily be fried, but your device would become inoperable. And if you have a tablet or something like that, that everything is hard soldered on and all that, then your whole device is really in effect unusable. And it's not like that, people have found these drives out in the wild. This was simply a security researcher going, what happens if I make a USB drive a booby trap? And there's a YouTube video showing it killing a laptop. So an interesting article, and I just wanted to share it. Again, I'm not saying that, don't go out and buy a USB drive if you need it, but it was just interesting. So I wanted to pass it along.
I can remember in the 90s getting all kinds of emails from people saying that there's a new virus that'll instantly destroy your computer. Well, this isn't a virus, but it's darn close to all those things that you were actually threatened about in chain email letters 20 years ago. It's a custom-made piece of hardware that would definitely have to be a spearfish kind of attack, but could use your PC's own power to destroy your PC.
Yeah, well, and just think about that. If you were wanting to do something, if you had a trade show, or you could put together a marketing thing, and you can have logos imprinted on USB drives, super cheap. Lots of companies do it, and you send it out to everybody at a company. Well, what happens if they plug it in to like 40 or 50 computers? Then boom, that company just took a major hit in productivity and repair, and all because it traces back to some PO box that was paid for in cash. So it's to me, this would be a great, if I were a fiction writer, this would be a great way to attack a company's infrastructure.
Right. And it's not going to do, it's not going to bring the company to the knees, but it could certainly cost a chunk of money.
Right. And, and technology is so miniaturized now, you could have it where those capacitors take 2, 3, 4 hours to charge just with a slow trickle charge, or logic that says after only happen on the 5th time it's been inserted, or something like that. So more just something to look at and go, this is kind of cool, but deviously cool, right. But interesting. So I wanted to share it with our faithful followers.
So speaking of both cool and devious, Windows 10, as I just complained about, wants you to upgrade real bad. Well, it turns out that if you got Windows 7 or 8 laying around, you may wake up and find yourself with Windows 10.
Yes, because Microsoft started, and what happened was, it's an optional update, and they said they quote unquote made a mistake and accidentally made it recommended. And so people would wake up and look at their computers and go, click here to continue your Windows 10 upgrade practice or whatever. So now they said, oops, we're sorry, we'll turn it off. Our bad. But yeah, it was companies do this all the time, do stupid things, forget to fact check and quality check their updates and software. It's just like every antivirus software at one point has had a false positive that deleted a system file and made your computer unusable. McAfee's done it, Symantec's done it, AVG's done it. So here Microsoft is pushing Windows 10 by accident to more people.
Right. And it's they say it's fixed.
Yeah.
And the thing here is that Windows has three levels of updates. There's critical, important, and optional. And this fix accidentally, I'm using air quotes very heavily here, made the optional updates installed by default. So the important updates are installed by default already. The critical updates are installed by default already. This made optional updates, and Windows 10 is an optional update. So it took user interaction. It it started the process, but you had to click it. So nobody accidentally got upgraded. But I'm more inclined to believe this is a case of Microsoft being stupid than Microsoft being evil. This was just somebody flipped a bit and released a package without testing it. That scares me more, actually, that they're releasing stuff without testing it.
Oh, I totally agree. I don't think that they were being evil. I just think that this is a great way to make fun of them because they did something stupid. Not like I've never done anything stupid myself, but I agree with you. Who doesn't check to say, okay, is everything right? Because we owe it to our customers not to screw something like this up. And we owe it to the internet at large to make sure our updates do what they say they do and don't break something else. So yeah, I totally agree.
And then on the same vein, Apple OS X10, XX10, it is becoming a target of malware, because there's more people out there. We've talked about this before. Not only is the market share growing, but people who own Macs tend to be more affluent people. So they're more rich target bed for hackers.
Well, and just has more people, a larger percentage of people use them. So it's not just people who are savvy using them, but now you're getting regular people using Macs, which is just a scary thing to think of. But instances of malware on Mac from 2010 to 2014 totaled 180. Well, so far in 2015, it's already reached 948. And they said, I'm looking for the number, they found something like 1,400 unique OS X malware samples. This is a 10-week survey of Bit9 and Carbon Black just from their customers. So this isn't even the population of the internet users at large. Bit9 and Carbon Black are not something that the layperson is going to be using. So it could actually be much worse. But I would think whenever through the first 10 months of a year and you've equaled 5 times what the previous 5 years had, I think that will qualify as an explosion. So
I just got to say, that's the dumbest name of a company ever, Bit9 plus Carbon Black. But hey, whatever. I own a company called Element OP. But yeah, it's this isn't surprising. It gets easier to do. There's wider adoption. Welcome to the real world, Apple users. Your smugness has now been dropped down at least a little bit.
But their denial hasn't. So this is just more of a, I don't know how they'll spin this, but it'll be fun to listen.
I'm listening to / reading a book right now by Guy Kawasaki. And you may not know who that is, but he's a software entrepreneur who's been around for a while. He was a software evangelist for Apple. That was his job, was to go out and evangelize Apple during the Mac days, the original Mac computer. And the book is doesn't have anything to do with computers it's not specifically about computers. It's actually about the startups. It's called The Art of the Startups. I'm not a startup, but I'm interested in learning different stuff, and it was one of the Audible daily deals, so I took it. But what's interesting is he's such a Mac fanatic. Even all these years later, he's left Apple. He no longer works there, but that evangelist vein is still in him. And there's so many times throughout the book where he takes pot shots at Windows. One of them was, if you have an hour for your presentation, plan a 20-minute presentation, because something is going to come up and something may go wrong. And he said, if you go in there with a Windows laptop, it may take you the whole hour to connect to the projector. Which is, quirky and funny, but also incredibly wrong and stupid. But it just shows to me that that's the Mac user. Of course, he's the proto, the ultimate, the evangelist Mac user, but they really believe that their product is so much better than everybody else. And now things like this are proving, nope, it's just a computer running software. Darn it.
Yep.
All right, let's take a break, as Leo Laporte likes to say. Let's stop the flow of our news links and talk a little bit about our friends over at DigitalOcean.com. They came to me a little while back and said, hey, we'd like to advertise on your show. I said, I got to be honest with you, I've never heard of you. It turns out I'm the only one. Everybody asked about them had heard of them. They are a virtual hosting solution, so they give you a virtual machine in the cloud to do with as you please. So if you're doing shared hosting right now, you got a WordPress blog hosted on, HostGator, and that's not good enough for you anymore. You need access to an actual server. DigitalOcean are the guys that can help you out. They give you a machine running on KVM, which is near hardware performance. Then the hardware is pretty darn awesome. Hex core processors, dedicated ECC RAM, RAID SSD storage. Yes, I said SSD. Everything on their machine is SSD, which means is lightning fast. You can spin up a new droplet, what they call one of their machines, in less than a minute. And I'm not kidding about that. I've tested it. It's true. You can go from nothing to a fully functional Ubuntu machine with Drupal installed and ready to log in like 53 seconds. And then everything's connected to the internet with their gigabit interface. You get private networking available if you want it. There's a simple API if you're not into servers, but you need a server for your app. They've got an API that your app can go straight with it. Everything you'd need, high quality stuff, lightning fast. In fact, I did my research. I tried. I looked around. I couldn't find anybody saying anything bad about them, other than they didn't like their service. Well, not liking it is not necessarily saying something bad about it. But not only they're good, but they're totally affordable. You can get started for as low as $5 a month. That gives you a half a gig of RAM on a 1-core processor and 20 gigs of storage. Not a machine that's going to tear down the world, but certainly enough to poke at, and certainly enough to run a WordPress blog. But you can move on up there, all the way up to their $80 a month plan, which is a quad-core processor at 8 gigs of RAM and 5 terabytes of transfer a month. But everything in between. But don't take my word for it. If you want to check them out, if you go to digitalocean.com/elementop or use elementop in the, Everyday Linux, not elementop, or use Everyday Linux in the referral box, they'll give you a $10 credit. So if you buy that $5 a month server with the $10 credit, my math says that's 2 months free. If you do the $10 a month thing with the $10 credit, that's a month free. So there's no risk there. You don't have anything to lose. Check them out, digitalocean.com. I'm running my stuff on them. I'm in the process of moving things over. I believe in them enough to put my money where my mouth is, and I've paid for a server, and I'm running. And no, they don't give me a particular discount. I got the same $10 credit that you guys get, and I believed in it, and I tried it. So check them out. If you need a server, digitalocean.com is where to go. And now we continue on with our news with another thing that isn't quite surprising, but it sounds like FUD to me. Rooting your phone may help create Android malware. As a guy who roots his phone, I'm guilty.
Okay, well, let me ask you this, Mark. How do you root your phone?
Well, the most recent one, what I have done in the past, actually, it's different for everything. But essentially, I download something from a trusted app that patches the kernel and roots the phone from a trusted source, rather.
Okay, and then you are then part of the problem, because the thing is, what is happening here isn't illegal or immoral or outside the terms of service. But what is happening is development outfits, Root Genius, iRoot, whatever you want to call it, what they do is they take and package exploits to breach the kernel and allow you to root it. Well, the thing is, that is out there and it's a legitimate app for legitimate uses, but a bad guy can take that and reverse engineer it and then package those exploits in another app to gain root access. And the thing is, they tried, how many did they try? 167 different exploits and bundled them one at a time into self-developed apps. And they tested 4 AV products. One of the 4 found 13 of the 167 exploits, and only the ones that were in the naked unpacked form. So all the ones that were packaged up, they totally bypassed the security that was out there. So by rooting your phone that way, again, you haven't done anything, but by them releasing the app that basically breaks into the kernel to allow you to root it, those can be reverse engineered and used for malicious means.
So let me tell you, I am aware that there are phones that can be rooted through an app. I have never had one of those phones. Every phone that I've ever had to root had to take place with a USB cable connected to a computer where you're flashing an image of either a ROM or a kernel onto the device. It's not something I could download and run on the app. Now, I know those things have existed, but I don't think they've existed since KitKat. I'm pretty sure KitKat put the kibosh on that. But if it wasn't KitKat, it was definitely Lollipop. So that apps, as far as I know, can no longer breach the kernel and root the device. You now have to go outside the OS itself. You have to move into the recovery mode, the bootloader, and use something called ADB, and use that to essentially you're reformatting the hard drive of the device. It's not a hard drive, but to use that example, you're reformatting the hard drive of the device, wiping away the original OS and putting on a patched OS on it. So I think that while I don't doubt that their stuff is accurate, I think it's old.
Yeah, it doesn't say the paper was presented at, I've never heard of the ACM conference on computer and communication security, but it was presented at the 2015 version. So you could, I could follow the link and research it, but I really wouldn't even know what I was looking at. So I don't know whether it's previous, but I don't think that they would be presenting that paper if it was something that, oh, by the way, the last two versions of Android make this mute.
Well, no, I think they would, because there are still millions, maybe billions of devices that don't have the last two versions of Android. There are a lot of phones out there that still don't have Lollipop, let alone Marshmallow. So It's still a real problem. There are a lot of things out there running KitKat and below, but I just don't think it's as simple as a guy writing an abstract for general consumption makes it out. That's just my take on it. I will say that Android is giving you fewer and fewer reasons to need to root. So my two reasons for always wanting to root were so I could tether illegally. Not illegally, but against my user agreement. So I'll admit that. I don't do it often, but there are times when I'm out somewhere and I must tether somewhere for whatever reason. So I keep that as an option. Well, there are now apps that do that without root. There are lots of them. My wife's phone is not rooted, but she can tether and it works just fine. And the other one is Backup, my favorite backup tool. Titanium Backup makes, because I'm a player arounder with phones, I sometimes, just this weekend, I find myself in a position where the only way to unbrick my phone was to wipe it and start over. And that's pretty darn frustrating if you've got to reinstall all your apps and you lose all your data. So I have scripts that run on a schedule that back up my stuff and upload it to Dropbox. Well, with Marshmallow, Android 6.0, they now do that for you and store that in your Google Drive account, and it doesn't count against your cap. And so when I redid it this time, of the 137, somewhere around that, apps on my phone, 96 of them updated themselves without me having to do anything. So those more and more Android is or Google, the company behind Android, is recognizing that that people need these, or they need, but they certainly may not need, but they want these tools, and rooting is the way to go about it. So they're taking away your reasons to root. And I think that once everything moves over to the new Marshmallow APIs and is starting to use that new technology, I think I won't need to root anymore. I think I have probably rooted my last phone.
Well, when you put it like that, it just sounds like it's a death knell in society if you can't root your own phone.
Well, it's not that I can't. I just don't need to anymore. And Android, Google, their phones, their Nexus phones, have always been really root friendly. But starting with a Lollipop, they're not anymore. In fact, once your phone is rooted, you can no longer take over-the-air updates. I now have to go grab them off their website, install them manually through that same process I was talking about. It breaks things now when you root it. It doesn't have to. they have chosen to break things if you're rooted because they recognize that it gives the average user more power than an average user could have. Just like, we tell people all the time, don't run as root in your Linux devices, don't run as administrator on your Windows devices, because for most people, you don't need to. If you're a developer, I'm not a developer, but I'm in the developer playground. I'm playing with stuff. I'm certainly an advanced phone user. So I assume those risks and take on the extra hassle of updating my phone. But Android Google is recognizing that the average person is doing this to get one or two features, and if they can give you that one or two features, you won't be doing it anymore.
No, I see that, and I have an Android phone, and I have really no desire to root it. I get on the website because I just don't like most apps. Most apps to me don't give you the functionality of their web page counterparts. So I just wish the screen were a little bit bigger when I go to the mobile websites. But again, I'm weird. I'm unusual. The fact that I am that way proves the need for the other side of the coin.
All right. And this next one, I don't even know what this headline means, Seth. You're going to have to fill me in. Source code can get you convicted of a crime? Okay,
this was a very interesting story I came across on Ars Technica. It's actually dated yesterday. And of course, their tagline is secret source code pronounces you guilty as charged. And there's a company that does DNA testing, and they have proprietary software that runs, and it's able to say that, hey, we looked at this DNA and this DNA, and we can say, with the likelihood of 1 in 5 trillion chances of being wrong, that this DNA matches this DNA. And so you are convicted based on that, but your defense lawyer says, we would like to review the source code to make sure that that program looked at the DNA sequences and matched them up, and there weren't any type of errors. Because whenever you're dealing something like that, if you have one error that's off by a factor of 10, that's no big deal unless it's something that runs several times. But you put a factor of 10 in here and a factor of 10 in there, it makes something that is, 1 to the 20 millionth chances of being wrong being a 1 in 2 chance of being wrong. And then to say, well, if it's that far, or vice versa. So something that I don't think it's that guy could say it's that guy because of a software error. But yet, because this is a proprietary program, and they're saying if we gave access to our source code, we would lose our competitive edge in the marketplace, and therefore just trust us, our source code is right, the DNA match was true, they're guilty. So does that make sense? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think so. I'm reading there was an update to the article since it was put out.
Right.
And there's a quote there that says source code is not used to assess forensic software's reliability when viewing a DNA interpretation method. I look at the math and examine the empirical results on real data. If the source code is available, I may test the software, but do not read the source code. Computer accuracy is relevant, but software text is not. So I that's sort of a softening maybe of what they're talking about.
Well, but again, okay, the fact is you don't know what the code does because you can't see the code. How do you know that the formula you coded was coded right? Something that is 10 minus 8 is 2, but 10 times 8 is 80. That's a difference of 78, but I can't check your math because your program is proprietary.
Right.
So, to me, a valid defense would be, or, you are allowed, at least in America, you used to be allowed to see your accuser in a court and present your side of the story. But if your accuser is a proprietary piece of code that no one on your team is allowed to vet to make sure it was done right, then have you received due process?
Yeah. So you have the ability to call your own expert witness. So
right.
Then you could do that, have another company run the results and get a different thing. But then it becomes like so many things in a court of law, a case of he said. So.
Right. But you can't cross-examine
The software,
there,
right?
you can't cross-examine the software to see how come the plaintiff expert says he's guilty and the defense expert says he's innocent. Well, the defense expert was paid to say he's innocent. That's what the jury's going to think.
Right.
So versus a neutral person go, well, the plaintiff's the state software, I found 25 errors in the 5 lines of code they gave me to review. So all of a sudden, if there's mistakes in something that doesn't relate to mathematical formulas, then that would call into question, if they can't get that right, maybe they didn't get the formulas right.
Yeah.
And again, it's an interesting article.
DNA has always been used to say the likelihood that this DNA matches this person. So we found some DNA on the scene, and there's a 1 in 12 billion possibility that this is the same person. Well, since there are only 7 billion people on the planet, and you have to, then you're pretty sure that's the guy, right?
But what if the formula was, instead of 1 in 7 billion, suppose that there was a decimal wrong and it was 1 in 70?
Right. Yeah. If it's 1 in 70 or 7,000, then you're like, well, it could be, round up any 7,000 people on the planet and it could be that guy instead. So it's all about the numbers. That was the point I was going for. It's the whole point of DNA-based evidence is all about the numbers. We say the probability that person A equals person B is X. And if you can't trust the probability, you can't trust the system. This is interesting to me in that, this could call the whole process of DNA evidence. It could throw it out.
Well, again, and who knows, maybe I'm not saying that I'm not saying there's any mistakes in the software, and I'm not saying that they're just trying to make a buck by throwing crap out there. I'm saying, and of course, me vetting their software would be meaningless because I am not an expert in programming, mathematics, or DNA. But having an expert in the field not having the ability to vet their software for mistakes, we're talking about somebody's life here, guilt or innocence. And I don't understand how the fact that, this is our livelihood, you can't question my credentials. I need my credentials to be expert witnesses. Imagine that if I walk in, sir, what is your credentials to testify in this computer case? Oh, I'm an expert. Well, what are they? I can't tell you, because then people might get the same credentials and I would no longer be able to make money for being an expert. You would get thrown out of the court for saying that. But if I have a program and say, I can't tell you how the program was written because then I would lose money, all of a sudden I've added a medium in there, and now I can charge whatever I want and not let anybody see it. I think this is crap.
Yeah. I think we're going to have to find a way to independently audit software before it's admissible in court. Something like that.
Totally. And again, I'm not saying that, I don't know whether the guy's guilty or innocent. I only know that true justice isn't being done if the code that was used to convict can't be vetted. Right.
It's no different than a fingerprint scanner that is only right, 10% of the time. And we got a fingerprint match between this guy and roughly 80% of the planet, but we're pretty sure it was him. One of the reasons we use fingerprints is, as far as we can tell, they're entirely unique. And DNA is supposed to be entirely, except with twins, right? Even twins can have the same fingerprints. So, but they don't have the same exact DNA. So you're supposed to be able, but anyway, math is hard, even in legal cases.
Yeah. Anyway, it was a very interesting story. I was like, it's just very neat.
Yeah, it's the perfect kind of thing to talk about on a Linux show that's not about Linux.
Right. Well, I'm sure it runs on Linux computers. So
continuing the theme of this show, which is, it's our pre-Halloween show. We're going to scare the pants off of you. This is props to these guys, actually. So all of the major browsers are built on open source code. So if you're having trouble hacking those browsers, just build your own using the same code.
Yeah, and replace it. And so there apparently Chrome is so good at sandboxing and preventing things that malware has said, we're not going to try to hijack Chrome. We're going to delete Chrome and throw in a version of Chromium that will, keylog, track, and all the other kind of stuff. So an InfoSec celebrity pointed out a new piece of adware called the eFast browser, and it does the same kind of crap that everything's done, but it not so much it's about the pop-ups and pop-unders. It basically deletes Chrome and presents something that looks like Chrome, that would probably fool a lot of people because it's got the little Google-esque symbol and other things like that, but it just replaces the browser and it substitutes one of their own making. So now when you connect to www.bankofamerica.com securely and you put in your username and password, you are legitimately doing that, but because they wrote this browser, they copied your username and password. And so now you did everything right, but you did it on the wrong browser, and now your financials have been hijacked.
Yeah, it's diabolical, and my hat's off to you, and I hate you all at the same time. So
yes.
By the regular methods, infecting a download or getting you to go somewhere else, you download this thing that when you run it, you probably had to click the yes, I agree button because it came with something that you did want, just like a toolbar, a browser toolbar. Now, what this is doing is replacing your browser so that now when you click on a web link or you click on your shortcut that used to go to Chrome, now it goes to this thing that looks like Chrome and acts like Chrome, and you think you're doing everything, and you're actually getting all your stuff like you did before, except that now they own you and they can control whatever you want. Wherever you want to go, they can redirect you. They own the browser at that point. It's brilliant, but it's scary all at the same time.
Definitely. So, and again, the sky isn't falling. Quit trying to download the whatever coupon clipper from, or because that's how it's coming in. And it's like, do you want to install a coupon clipper? And then in half point font, by clicking install, you agree to uninstall Chrome and replace it with this thing that looks exactly like Chrome, but is going to steal your life. And you go, yes, I want the coupons. So
I recently got a legitimate email from a real bank. It was a small mom and pop bank that I was considering doing business with. It was ridiculous, actually. I wanted to create an online account, and the only way they could create an online account for me is if I went into the bank. And I actually sent an email and said, "Are you kidding me?" So in order to set up an account so that I don't have to go into the bank, I have to go into the bank. But they sent me an email with a link in it that said something like, "Click here to set your password." And I was like, oh no, not even am I going to consider that. And it's so stupid of you. You are so backwards to even send me that email that I refuse to consider doing business with you. It was like I said, a small bank. I like to support local businesses whenever I can. Their rates were good. It was high interest rate checking account that didn't cost anything. I was like, okay, this is good. This checks all the altruism boxes. I'm supporting local economy. Plus I'm getting a good deal for me. I don't really like working with Bank of America, my current bank, because they're a soulless, inhuman corporation. But at least they don't send me emails that say to reset your password, click here. And it just made me realize that not only are we dealing with this kind of ignorance, that's really the only way you can describe it, on users, but also on businesses. They are just as ignorant, and people are still clicking links that they get an email. And I tell people all the time, I tell my kids and I tell people at work, don't click on it if you didn't ask for it. Chris, he's fond of saying he doesn't click an email ever. So because I'm a tool, when I send him a link, I try to make it as convoluted as possible with as many characters as possible in it. Sometimes I've actually hashed the URL just to mess with him, because I know he's going to manually retype that every time I send him a link. But that's just because I'm evil. But I don't go so far as to say never click on links in email. But if you didn't ask for it, if you didn't go looking for it, don't install it. Don't click it. If you go to a website and it helpfully says, hey, would you like to download this? No, as a matter of fact, I would not. I didn't go there looking for it. I'm not going to install it. But this was a bank, and the only way I could do business with this bank, a legitimate bank, a legitimate federally insured organization, the only way I could do it was to violate one of my own policies. And so I said, bye-bye. I'm not doing anything with you anymore.
Yeah, it is just amazing that, I was going to say something, but you talked so long, I forgot it. So no wonder you do all the talking. you ran my stream of consciousness off
the road.
So
I have somebody at work who will ask me a question, through our local instant messaging or send me an email, and I'll be doing 9 other things. And 5 hours later, I'll get back to her and she'll say, I've figured it out while I was waiting for you. And so she now accuses me. That's your plan, isn't it? You wait long enough that you think when I come back to it, when you come back to me, I will have figured it out. So that's what I do. I just talk long enough that you forget what you were going to say, and I rule the airwaves yet again.
Yes. Darn you.
So I may not be worthy enough to rule all of the internet, but I am worthy in some respects. But I couldn't pick up Thor's quote unquote hammer from this guy. I saw this video. It was all over the web. It's actually pretty darn amazing. A guy built a working hammer that only he can lift.
Yeah. Props to this guy. This is awesome. So, I was trying to remember, and I didn't want to look it up, but if anyone be worthy to possess the power of Thor, basically they can lift the hammer. So this guy made a hammer that looks like Thor's hammer, but it is basically one powerful electromagnet, and it has a fingerprint scanner. So if you put it on something sufficiently heavy metal and you turn it on, then you can't lift it unless your fingerprint matches, and then it turns the electromagnet off and you can then pick it up. So only those who have the right fingerprint can lift it. So I just thought it was pretty cool.
So he built it with a capacitive handle so that touching it is what turns on the magnet. So it's not just running the batteries down all the time. So when you touch the handle, you turn on the magnet. One of the guys, I'm sure he was an engineer, figured this out. And so he just kicked the hammer off the piece of metal and then picked it up. So he cheated and beat Thor's hammer. And I love that. So the engineer had all these people going, and another engineer came along and solved the problem. It's great. But yeah, it was an Arduino processor when he put his thumb on it, and that was part of the giveaway because it took so long. He used such a low-powered machine that it took a long time. If he'd used a faster fingerprint reader, probably nobody would have figured it out. He could have just grabbed it, but he was putting his thumb on a specific place and waiting long enough to pick it up. But yeah, great idea. Thor's hammer in reality.
So if he would have been a better stage musician, he would have grabbed it and started talking and waxing about how awesome he was, and then said, okay, now I'm going to try to pick it up. And then it would have lifted right off. So, a little bit better stage presence, and he would have probably kept the gag up longer.
And of course, it's also pretty obvious that it's on the only piece of metal anywhere around.
Right.
But great. Mad props to him. I bet it's heavy. Because it had a couple of magnetos from microwaves, and then the batteries. It probably weighed a ton. Well, not a ton, but a lot. All right, that's it. That's your news. It wasn't all news. It was some olds, and that's your discussion for this week. So now let's talk a little bit about history. Seth, what happened this week in history?
All right, I found out that this week in 1996, so 19 years ago, the pre-release of KDE was released. So, basically the beta that happened October the 14th, 1996. 1.0 came out, I believe it was in December, but the first really usable release happened this week in history.
And it's a pity that Chris isn't here because that is his beloved desktop environment, KDE. I'm still a GNOME guy, probably always will be a GNOME guy, but I actually like the earlier KDE stuff better than the newer stuff.
Yeah,
I probably first tried it in 99, 2000, so it had been around a few years, but yeah, 1996. It's not that old, and yet in computer terms, it's ancient.
Yeah, I mean, wow, think about it. That was Windows 95 was out by then.
Right. And they were basically copying Windows 95, which is you know, it's an interesting, we've had this discussion before. One of the knocks about open source software, Linux in particular, is that it's derivative. All they do is copy other people's stuff. But then when they do something that isn't exactly like Microsoft, well, it's too confusing to use. It's not familiar enough. It's too hard to learn something new. So it's literally a case of damned if you do, damned if you don't. You can't make something unique, because then it's too different, and you can't make something that everybody can use, because then it's too unique.
Yep. That's, and the thing is, even the original Apple and Microsoft, they were copying Xerox. So somebody does something and everybody else copies them. The next time around, somebody else does something and the guy who innovated over there copied them. It's just a round robin of, it's probably the same guy saying, I'm giving Microsoft the lead this time, and I'm giving Apple the lead this time, and I'm giving, it's the same guy. Right. It's the same smart computer at the center of the world that is actually controlling our lives. So
one of my favorite lines from Bill Gates, I'm paraphrasing, is Apple says that we stole from them. The way I look at it, we both had this rich neighbor named Xerox, and when Microsoft broke into the house to steal from them, they found that Apple had already ransacked the place.
Yeah, man, that's so true. That makes me like Bill Gates even more. So, not just because because he had the sense of humor about it. Pretty cool stuff. I like that.
All right, Seth, what do you have for your show closing spectacular this week?
Well, we talked about old versions of Windows. So if you click on this link, it's basically a JavaScript that shows you what Windows 1.01 looked like from 1985. So you can, you could go and click on whatever.
Oh, it's clickable. It's functional.
Yes, it's Windows 1.01. Which you look at it today, you go, oh my gosh, this is crap. You even have a B drive option. That's how old it is. But yeah, there you go. That's my weird link to kill your productivity. As you can see, show your kids, this is what I never saw because it was on a later version when I got there. But this is what started it all. Windows 1. You move the decimal over and you got 10.1. So look what moving a decimal gets you. It goes from this to Windows 10.
Oh, and so you've got different versions of the software you can load. So right now I'm looking at PC DOS 2.0. I can run Microsoft Adventure. I can load that. So those are the things that are in the software. I just mounted the disk at Microsoft Adventure in Drive A. That is so cool. So if I click on the A drive now, I should. Oh, wow. It's so amazing that what was at one time the premier operating system that Microsoft could create. At this time, the Mac was blowing them out of the water. But the premier operating system that Microsoft could create can be run in a browser in JavaScript.
Yep. So, this is kind of this is something neat to see and look at and go, wow, back when I used Windows 3.1 and 3.11, I would be much more at home in there. Now I'm like, wait a minute, what do I do here? But yeah, there's my show closing spectacular for the week.
I'm sorry, I'm playing Reversey. You go ahead and continue with the show. This is cool.
And if you look, it shows it like what it would look like loading up first. Of course,
right.
Obviously it does it much faster now. Otherwise you would have turned it on and went and made babies and come back or something. It would have taken forever to load. Yeah.
Yeah. Today I get frustrated if my machine takes more than 30 seconds to load. Back when I was 10 and I was playing with my TRS-80, I would push play on the tape deck and go outside and shoot some basketball and come back as it was loading. So it's amazing how things change. And yet they're still the same. We're still impatient. We still complain. I probably complained less back then than I do now. As the expectations have increased, so has my complaining.
Right. And it has expectations increase, your complaining is exponential. It's
Exactly.
like, whew. So now, I complain. I don't even need a reason to. I'll complain because there's nothing to complain about today.
I just wish I had something to complain about. All right, this is the part of the show where I tell you how you can combat feedback to us. You can go to the website elementop.com, click the contact us button at the top of the page. That will send me a nicely formatted email that gets priority in my inbox. If you want to do it yourself, if you want to send something to all three of us, that's edl@elementop.com. That will send an email to all three of us, and we will all see it. If you want your voice to appear right here alongside of ours, you could call 559-I-AM-OPIE and leave us a voicemail on our Google Voice account, and we will play it on the show. We love hearing from you. We truly do. We've the feedback box has been pretty full lately, and I love that. But we could always use more. I'd love to do another full-on listener feedback show. We've been getting 3 or 4 or 5 in, not enough to do a full show. I'd like to do that in the near future. So check it out. Next week, we will actually have a listener guest. I'm not sure we've ever done any on this show. On my Tightwad Tech show, we did a few listener spotlights, which is actually how I came to know Chris. He was a listener spotlight on the Tightwad Tech, and then later we did the whole show, Everyday Linux, with him. So we've got a listener coming on, and if you want to do that, you're welcome to let us know too. We love having listeners feedback to us and tell us how we're doing, even if you're not kind about it. I still read those and appreciate it. So Seth, thank you as always for being the amazing host that you are. 100% faithful, just like Horton the Elephant. You said what you meant, and you meant what you said. So listener, thank you for hanging out with us. We did have a couple of people drop by the live stream, but they didn't stick around long. Check us out every Sunday night at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Or around that time, we do the show. We love to interact with you in the chat room. So check it out. But for now, I'm going to say that ends this episode of Everyday Linux.
See ya.
All right, I'm stopping the broadcast.